BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Loving it. Just living the dream, really.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast, bringing you all the essential news, analysis and gossip in less time than it takes VAR to check for offside. It's Monday the 20th of November. I'm your host Liam McLeod, and coming up today...
Armstrong and Taylor have combined to win it back, and now it's McGinn. Turns it back for Armstrong! Go Scotland!
Following a thrilling 3-3 draw at Hampden, what did we learn from Scotland's final group match against Norway? Living the dream.
So proud, back-to-back tournaments. We've got a team and a group of players that the country's so proud of, and I think that showed at the end.
Like John McGinn, there we reflect on what was a memorable qualifying campaign and look ahead to Germany. And
who's going to provide that threat, who causes that chaos? Increasingly it's become Scott McTominay.
The double life of Scott McTominay. We find out why the Manchester United man's club and country fortunes often differ.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
So all that to come on the Scottish Football Podcast. Today I'm joined by our chief sports writer Tom English for this new, refreshed looking or sounding Scottish Football Podcast. Tom, how are you?
Very good, Liam. Still excited about last night. Still excited about this campaign, and roll on December the 2nd when the big draw happens.
Yeah, looking forward to that. 12 days' time, I think it is, if my arithmetic's correct. It's just been, Tom, the most memorable campaign. I can't remember the last one that was quite as stunning as this. And it's also back-to-back top two finishes because they finished second in the World Cup qualifying group last time around as well. So they've hit a certain level, and it's great to see, isn't it?
It's amazing, and it's not just the results and the wins that has made this such an unforgettable campaign. It's all the other stuff. You know, it's the comeback from the dead against Norway. It's the game in the rain at Hampden against Georgia and the craziness that unfolded that night. The Ouija's with squeegees and all of that. Great, great fun. It was the incredible victory against Spain and the classiness of it, and the emergence of Scott McTominay as a goal scorer, the continuation of John McGinn as a goal scorer, the way the team bonded with the fans, hope and energy coming back into the national team landscape. It was just so many. It wasn't just a football; it was a vibe as well, Liam, wasn't there? It was a real movement forward, I think, for the national team.
Lots more to come from Tom and also from Mark Critchley of The Athletic, who'll be joining us a little later. But first, let's round up all the Scottish football news in under 60 seconds or thereabouts. Attention then now turns to the Euro 2024 draw next month after Scotland ended their successful qualifying campaign with that thrilling 3-3 draw against Norway at Hampden last night. Sticking with the Scots, national team captain Andy Robertson's confirmed his recovery from a dislocated shoulder is progressing well, but has refused to put a firm date on his return. In the domestic scene, Ross County's search for a new manager could be over, the BBC understanding that Derek Adams could be about to return to Dingwall for a third spell in charge. Keep tabs on the website for updates on that one. Rangers remain a point ahead of Celtic at the top of the SWPL after beating champions Glasgow City 2-0. And the undefeated Inverness manager Duncan Ferguson has revealed the secret to his success. He told Sportsound at the weekend that he's worn the same shirt and jumper for each of his last 6 games in charge. Let's hope he's washing them between matches, Tom.
Well, if he's not, Liam, you're the man to go to Duncan Ferguson and say, Duncan, you need to wash your clothes, son. And I wish you all the best with that.
Yeah, I might give that a miss, to be perfectly honest with you. A great start for Duncan Ferguson. And like I say, all the Scottish sports news is available at the website bbc.co.uk/sportscotland. Stick it in your favourites anytime you need it. First up then today, and where else could we start but Hampden and that 3-3 draw against the Norwegians. Tom, what did you make of the match itself last night? I thought it was quite a strange yet entertaining evening.
Yeah, it's a good way to describe it. First half was really poor. I think Steve Clarke described it as the team was going like they were playing a testimonial game. it did look like that. They were off the pace, gave up a lot of chances. Now, you have to caveat that with, a lot of heavy hitters missing for Scotland. A lot of heavy hitters missing from Norway, of course, but we won't worry about them. It's defensively, I thought they were weak, but that's not Scotland's defence, the first choice defence. So I'm pretty calm about it. Yeah, look, there's plenty of goals in the Scotland team. They scored 3, conceded 3. They've conceded a few too many lately. But again, Tierney out, Hickey out, Robertson out. There are explanations for this. But I thought it was a kind of an odd one. I think people, having qualified a couple of games ago, it was a kind of people just kind of not used to this, right? The Tartan Army are kind of looking at each other going, what do we do with this? We're supposed to be coming here stressed or browbeaten, either needing the result to get something or a salvaging of a pride mission. This was a new territory for them. So it was all a bit odd. I think Steve Clarke and John McGinn spoke about how strange it was. But give me that kind of strange every campaign, because they've done their work. And it was a brilliant achievement to qualify ahead of time.
Oh, you take this every time. I thought it was really interesting listening to Steve Clarke talking about looking forward and being able to learn from these last 2 games against Georgia and Norway and take it forward into future campaigns. And hopefully they will be in the same position again in future campaigns. And it's being able to do what the top tier sides do, because you would seldom see England or Portugal or France, who are probably the 3 best sides in Europe right now, getting to this point in the campaign, having already qualified and not going through the gears still, even though they've already done the job. Albeit England weren't great against Malta, but they still won the match, obviously.
Still won the match. And it was interesting to hear Clarke talking afterwards that he was using these last 2 games as training sessions in terms of a back 4, as opposed to the back 3, whatever you want to call it. So that was interesting. He did, if you looked at him, you see his body language as they were doing the lap of honour, which I thought was quite hilarious. He was trying to crack a smile, but actually internally he was a bit furious. I'd say he didn't know what to think. 3-3.
He was annoyed with that El Yunusi goal. He said afterwards.
Furious. He was furious with it. So he had a face like thunder, and then occasionally he'd get a smile because, the job was done. But then he'd go back to El Yunusi and the face of thunder would return. So he was and listen, he has been a hero, a totemic figure for Scotland for a number of years now. And he'll enjoy his break. He said he's off to put his feet up for a little while. My goodness, he deserves that. But I'd say all the while, he won't a notepad and pen won't be far away from his reach, because he's got to pick 23 players at some point. And I'd say that process will begin now, He'll know many of them already, Liam, won't he? But there are still maybe 3 or 4 positions that are debatable.
See, if you look at the 2 ends of the pitch last night, just finally on the Norway game, Tom, the goalkeeper was Zander Clark getting his second start, having started in Tbilisi, and Jacob Brown up the other end of the pitch. Did those 2 do enough over the 2 games in Clark's case and last night in Brown's case to justify their inclusion next summer?
Clark, I would say, yes. Craig Gordon played 45 minutes for Hearts' closed doors game last week, so you'd hope that he'll kick on. Although if he comes back into the Hearts team, that compromises Clark's position in the squad. I still think it'll be Gunn, Clark and Gordon for the 3 goalkeepers. Down the other end, Jacob Brown. That quote from Clark, he's an honest boy who runs around. That didn't sound like the kind of thing you'd want your manager to say about you. But he is an honest boy and he does run around, but he missed a big chance. Clark is very loyal. Shankland only came on for a couple of minutes again. I think that was surprising. Brown has to be vulnerable. But I think Shankland is vulnerable as well. And maybe he only goes with, he's been listing 4 strikers, including Ryan Christie in his squads. Maybe he only goes with 3 for the Euros. Christie, Dykes and Adams. Maybe Shankland and Brown both miss out and he brings an extra midfielder. Maybe that's a Harvey Barnes, if Harvey Barnes declares for Scotland. Who knows? These are all the fantastic debating points that we have, Liam, thanks to this team getting Scotland there. We're going to have great crack with them.
You're listening to the Scottish Football Podcast.
It seems a natural time then to reflect on the campaign just past and look ahead to Germany and the draw in less than 2 weeks' time. What, though, is your standout moment in this campaign? I mean, for me, it's the Kenny McLean goal on his weaker foot in Oslo to just really open the door to Euro 2024. What was yours?
That would be there. I'd give you a different one, would be the Spain home game. The fact that it was unexpected. The fact that it was so classy, so authoritative, so deserved. This was not backs to the wall. They outplayed Spain. Now, I know Spain were in a process of rebuilding at the time, but Scotland completely outplayed them. It was a complete performance. And it almost took the eyes out of my head. It was so good. And the atmosphere that night was unreal. And Rodri helped that by whinging, which was great fun as well. That's become a part of the folklore of this campaign, hasn't it? Rodri's tears, It's just...
He denied it. He tried to deny it in Seville after. He did. Of course, they won 2-0.
Yeah, but, it's too late. It's too late. He was whinging a bit. Maybe everyone kind of exaggerated a touch. That's all right. That's all right too. But I think that night, yes, of course, Oslo was just mesmeric. But it was a smash and grab. The Spain win was outstanding from start to finish. To see the Scotland team play that way against what was still a good opposition, was a joy to behold.
So now we look forward to the draw. Scotland will be in pot 3, missed out in pot 2. They needed to win by 2 goals against Norway for that to become a reality. But actually, Tom, they're probably better off in pot 3, where they're currently in pot 3, Slovakia, the Netherlands, Serbia, Croatia and Italy. Whereas pot 2, Hungary, Turkey, Denmark, Albania, Romania and Austria. And with all respect to the sides in pot 2, I think I'd rather be playing one of them than one of the teams in pot 3, who Scotland have all had issues with in the not too distant past.
Yeah, and I think the respective world rankings between pot 2 and pot 3, I think there's a stark difference. And Scotland are in, I would say, the easier one in inverted commas, but you're right. Pot 3 is where they need to be to give themselves the best chance. So well done, Scotland, for not doing anything crazy like winning comprehensively last night. Congratulations. Another Steve Clark masterstroke.
Indeed. He knows what he's doing, doesn't he? The man knows what he's doing.
He's got it.
Well, finally, in today's edition of the podcast, there are a few absolutely crucial players for Scotland. We know that, but one in particular has really stepped up this campaign. 7 goals in 8 games. Scott McTominay has become a proper national hero, but he's not always so revered with his club side, Manchester United. So how is he viewed in England? With us to discuss is the Athletic's Mark Critchley. Mark, thanks for joining us on the Scottish Football Podcast. Are you well?
Oh, good, guys. Thanks for having me.
How do you think McTominay's international form has helped him at club level? Because when you look at the statistics at club level, it seems to have certainly elevated his performances. It certainly caught the notice of Eric Ten Hag as manager.
Yeah, I think it has helped. I think at the moment, he's very much part of Ten Hag's plans, which is something that you might not have expected at the very start of the season. It's almost, since he scored those 2 goals late against Brentford, in the kind of role and position that we've seen him taking up with Scotland, he's come back into the side. At the very start of the season, he was only getting a few minutes off the bench. I think even last season, he wasn't part of that first choice midfield that was very much Bruno Fernandes, Christian Eriksen and Casemiro. But I think what Ten Hag has realised recently, seeing his performances for United and at international level as well, to be fair, is that he provides a certain threat in the penalty area. He makes these late runs into the box that you've seen him in his goals for Scotland as well. He's just a little bit of a chaos element, if you like, inside the penalty area, and turns up and can use his physicality to make things happen. And United have really liked that at the moment. Rasmus Højlund's very young and very raw, promising, but still raw. Rashford's out of form. Anthony hasn't produced that kind of output. You've got Bruno Fernandes pulling all the strings. So who's going to provide that threat? Who causes that chaos? Increasingly it's become Scott McTominay.
How's he viewed at Manchester United and in England generally, not just over the last few months, where he's, obviously his exploits with the national team have made the back pages. How's he viewed generally?
I think there's a lot of admiration for his ability. I think, he obviously helps to uphold this long tradition of academy players breaking into the first team at United. He's been probably the most successful of those over the last 5-10 years behind Marcus Rashford. I remember when he came into the side, there wasn't huge. He wasn't the type of player that comes through the academy and there's loads of raving reports about him. But Mourinho brought him in, and Mourinho loved him, and he loved him so much that he even created an award at the end of season called Manager's Player of the Year, just so he could give it to McTominay. He loved him that much. So Mourinho was a huge fan, and I think for what Mourinho wanted, he was perfect, because he does have that kind of physical presence that he desired at the base of midfield. But I think, over the years since, with all due respect to Scott, I think there's some limitations that he has in that role that have held him back slightly. I think he had that partnership with Fred, you might remember, that a lot of people like to poke fun at and call McFred. Now, that came to an end this summer when Fred left for Fenerbahce. I thought it was a pretty successful partnership. Sometimes it was almost, it was a symbol of where United were at and the recruitment that, it wasn't great. It wasn't one of the best midfield partnerships in the world, but it helped get them out of sticky situations and help get them results. So I think there's a lot of respect for his ability, like I say. I just think that now, maybe he hasn't always been suited to that kind of role that you need at the base of midfield in a modern, in an elite football side, basically. Players now, they're expected to get the ball off the defence, hold it under pressure, move it upfield quickly. I don't think that's ever been his strongest suit. But now we're seeing him move further up the pitch where he's got less of those responsibilities. He's able to cause a few more problems, and use his physicality further up the pitch. And I think that is now starting to suit him a lot more.
You look at the midfield players that they've signed, Mark, over the years, since McTominay has been there, like, let's say, Matic, Fred, Donny van de Beek, Casemiro, Eriksson, Fernandes as well.
Mm-hmm.
All of those, millions and millions of pounds. And yet McTominay still hangs in there. Like, there's resilience in this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And he hasn't ever, lied down and just given up his place. And like I say, when I remember him coming into the team and Mourinho picked him, he was picking him ahead of Paul Pogba. It was a Champions League game in Seville. I was covering it, and we were like, "Who is this McTominay guy?" Or nobody had heard he was playing ahead of Pogba. People thought it was a flash in the pan. People thought, he'll be shipped off to Everton or Sunderland or wherever most United academy cast-offs end up going. But he's still here, and I think that's is testament to his longevity, his determination to make it, his ability, and also, as we're seeing now, his versatility as well, where even at the start of this season, where there were a lot of question marks over his future and whether he'd be staying around and whether he'd get the minutes, you've seen him now almost reinvent himself slightly and force his way back into the team.
Mark, thanks very much for joining us on the Scottish Football Podcast. That's Mark Critchley from The Athletic. My thanks as well to our chief sports writer, Tom English. That's us for today. Thank you so much for listening. And if you've got any comments or questions, just send them all to Tom English. I think that's probably the best way to go about it. Or, alternatively, you can get in touch with our new email address, scottishfootball@bbc.co.uk. That's scottishfootball@bbc.co.uk. And Tom will pick them all up there. Don't be shy. And you can get us wherever you get your podcasts. If you haven't done so already, you can subscribe or just search for the Scottish Football Podcast. And we will be back with another edition for you on Tuesday. Bye for now.
Hi, it's Amy Irons here. I just wanted to tell you that Sacked in the Morning is back for a new series. We are your survival guide to football management. If you want to hear exactly what goes on in the dugouts and dressing rooms across the world, then we are the pod for you. And as ever, I'll be joined by former Scotland gaffer Craig Levine and some of football's best managers to provide all the insight you could possibly need. And you can find it on BBC Sounds. Just search for Sacked in the Morning.